I don't think I truly understood when I first got into real estate the vulnerability that you see with a lot of these people, the vulnerable state that a lot of them are in, because you're dealing with most of the time they're selling their childhood home, they're selling their grandparents' home, they're selling their mother's or their
Mhm.
parents' home who've passed away, and it's tough. It's really tough. I've seen it be done the wrong way, and I've just vowed that I would never allow myself to make this strictly a transactional thing where I'm more so looking at the dollar figure than the relationship being built. My biggest thing when asking that question is like, look, I am much more interested in building a relationship with you through the vehicle of real estate than I am about just collecting a paycheck from you when this thing closes.
Welcome to an inspirational people interview on the Share Life podcast. I'm Jason Scott Matoya, and in this episode, I'm speaking with Derek Worley. Derek, say hello.
What's up, guys? How's everybody?
Everybody's doing good. I'm ready to hear your story. Derek and I met, I had a client several years ago called cablesandkits.com. My friend Craig Haney owned it. And Derek worked for Craig. At some point that he transitioned and decided to launch his own business. And I watched him from a distance and I was inspired by just what he did, the hard work he put in, the way he communicated and marketed himself. And here we are several years later, and I wanted to capture that story and share it with you. So Derek, his mission is to be the most open, honest, and trusting voice in the real estate industry. And there's a lot of real estate agents. So that's a high
Mhm.
bar. But the thing that really separates him is he cares about relationships. Relationships over revenue is his slogan, his tagline. I'm gonna just go ahead and pull up the website here because when I went to it, I was just really impressed with just the prominence of relationships over revenue. Derek, let's start there. Tell us, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah, relationships over revenue. One of the things, whether it's a listing appointment or a buyer appointment, you get the question a lot of times, especially when you work with maybe I do a lot with maybe like FISBOs or expireds or whatever. Maybe some people that aren't referral based and they have no idea. You're just one person out of 15, right? You
Mm,
get the question like, why you? And we do meetings every morning with a lot of different agents, veteran agents, brand new agents, and we ran this the other day and kind of asked that question like, why you? There's so many agents out there, why you? Um, and there's so many different ways you could go through that, but you know, genuinely speaking, it's I'm especially at a point now in my career where I've realized that the whole "it takes two to tango," right? Like, I genuinely want it to be something where there's a hand holding going on and there's a relationship being built to where long after the transaction's done, you know, we're still connecting, we're still talking, we're still seeing how the family's doing, how life is.
mhm.
Because at the end of the day, I'll be honest, I don't think I truly understood when I first got into real estate the vulnerability that you see with a lot of these people, the vulnerable state that a lot of them are in, because you're dealing with most of the time they're selling their childhood home, they're selling their grandparents' home, they're selling their mother's or their
Mhm.
parents' home who've passed away, and it's a very, very, very it's tough. It's really tough. I mean, I've seen what I would consider to be burly men hug me and cry and just, um, it's something that's very I've seen it be done the wrong way, and I've just vowed that I would never allow myself to make this strictly a transactional thing where I'm more so looking at the dollar figure than the relationship being built. So, my biggest thing when asking that question is like, look, I am much more interested in building a relationship with you through the vehicle of real estate than I am about just collecting a paycheck from you when this thing closes. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, Jason, you know this. You've sold property. Can bad agents sell real estate? Yes.
Yes.
All right. So if bad agents can sell real estate and I can sell real estate, what am I doing in between that separates me from the bad agent or even the good agent, right? So that's for me, that's what it's really about, is just making sure that the relationship with that individual is something that is nurtured even way after the transaction's done. Because I truly I tell people, look, I'm going to treat you no different than I would my own mother in the real estate
Yeah.
transaction because it's that important to me. And I understand that trust isn't built through phone calls. Trust is built through action, and it's built through um, you know, proving yourself.
Mhm.
And that's what I tell people all the time. Like, look, I don't ask for trust because that's not something you're going to give me over the phone, but I ask for an opportunity to build that trust with you, to show you that it truly is more about the relationship than the revenue. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
It's definitely more of
Well,
a
yeah, I think it's
lifestyle,
important to, yeah, just
slogan,
to realize that the relationship matters most over the long term. It's the long term game, right?
It is, yeah, yeah,
Maintaining healthy relationships, win win in engagements, um, and doing good work, making commitments and following through, demonstrating that you follow through is how you build trust, like you said. Like I think those two pieces are just fundamental building blocks for any successful business. I mean,
100%.
where did those come from? Did you just did it just happen to be that you oriented that way? Did you learn those lessons?
So it's a great question. Like, so two things I would say. One, I mean, as long as you know me, I think I've always been a, a, a people person. I've always been naturally just the way I was raised. I'm very empathetic, so I'm always kind of putting myself in other people's shoes. Like, how would I feel if this happened? So I'm always looking at that angle. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's a pro and a con. Sometimes you get told you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, which is like, yeah, probably. But it's funny. I've thought about that a good bit. Like, why truthfully, why do I care as hard as I do sometimes? Because sometimes I feel like I might care more than than the other person that's actually receiving that. Um, I had a transaction. It was probably like my second or third transaction, Jason, where um, and I'll spare all the specific details, but it was something where I was working with this individual, and this person was driving me absolutely nuts. I mean, it was one of those things where if you told her to do A, she would do B very quickly. And there was no sense of respect from a professional standpoint. You make a recommendation and it's kind of like spit in your face, do the other thing. And there was just so much. And I finally, probably midway through that transaction, I just kind of hit this mental breaking point where I just finally was like, you know what, man, I don't even care. I'm just ready to just finish this transaction and collect this check. I'm just done.
Mhm,
I'm checked out. And I realized for the next 2.5 to 3 weeks that the rest of that transaction, in no way, shape, or form, truthfully, was I looking out for her best interest in any way. It was simply from getting from here to the closing, and that was it. I really there was no sort of intentionality between, you know, uh, and again, this isn't. I'm not making it sound like for some reason I've like jeopardized or like put her in a bad position. Of course not. But it was something where it was just there was no attempt to really build and strengthen this relationship. It was more like yes or no answers. I'm giving you a yes and that's it. We're moving on, right? And we ended up closing that thing and I got done and I started kind of like looking back and analyzing that and I thought that's
mm,
very dangerous. Like that's a very dangerous place to be, not only for myself because it goes against who I am,
mhm,
but also I can't truly be good at who I am and what it is that I do if I'm strictly transactional. Because
mhm,
it it makes it hard to even if it's just the transaction, I can't sit there and honestly be very empathetic toward you because it's just a check to me.
yeah.
And
You're just an object to help me get what I want.
well, and truthfully, Jason, it becomes like they almost become an obstacle between you and the closing. Like
Yeah,
anytime
yeah,
there's any sort of hiccup, you're like, oh, you again. And
yeah,
it's like, well, hold on. Like that there is no transaction without that individual or without that seller or without these
mhm,
questions, right? Like if she knew the answer to
mhm,
these questions, she wouldn't need you anyway. Was she difficult? 100%. Like it was extreme. But you know what? I realized very quickly in that moment of like, Derek, do you think every transaction is going to be rosy? Like, of course not. Okay, so how do we stick to who we are while also handling those type of
mm,
transactions? And it I always go back to that because there's times where
mhm,
during any transaction, something happens and you're like, oh gosh, and you start to kind of like feel that. Ugh. But then I just have to sit back and go, no, 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 no. This isn't about me. This isn't about me. I'm making
yeah,
this about me right now, and it's not about me. This is about getting them into their home or getting them into getting them out of their home into that next step of life, whatever that is,
mhm,
and just kind of, and that's where I rely on the Lord. And a lot of, in that is just praying in that moment, be like, Lord, remind me what I'm doing this for. I'm not doing this for just a paycheck.
mhm,
This is something that I want to build this relationship up with them and be able to gain that trust. So
yeah,
I honestly, Jason, I look back at that second or third transaction, and it taught me a lot by teaching me what
Mhm.
not to look
Yeah.
at from a mental standpoint.
So I would make the argument that perhaps that was something in like you had learned at a smaller level before, like you had something to bring to that situation to be able to come to that analysis. Um, and so I'm curious if there was something unique about like you worked for people. Did
Mhm.
and you may have had a similar dynamic, but maybe it wasn't as extreme. Like, what was it about this situation that made it so different than any situations like that that came before it? Was it simply being on your own, being your own business owner, or do you
Yeah,
think it
I
was
think because it
something
was
else?
new, right? Like I had
Mm,
never worked for myself. Like I
yeah,
and Jason, there's such a freedom, like, it was like a newfound freedom where there was no I remember it taking me a minute. I remember talking to my dad and saying, "Man, it's like I've had almost like these blinders on because I've been employed for so long and you look at things a certain way. And then when you become self-employed and you start working for yourself, you go, huh, well, this is all just a game. Like there's I can really work within these the parameters of the law. Like I can kind of
yeah, yeah.
do this however I want." And I think I called it kind of like the employment brain. Like I had
Mm.
employment brain of having worked for somebody and you work within these walls, within these
These are the
times,
rules.
within
This is
these
how you win. This is
parameters.
how you lose.
Exactly. And so I think there was that going on where it was kind of like learning the rules or lack thereof of being self-employed. Um, but also having like a broker that you work under. So there is an accountability standpoint from your broker because you you I'm not employed by him per se, but it is
But
something
there's a
that's
tension.
still, yeah, there's that hierarchy there. So I think it was just for me, I knew that from the first transaction, I knew that this was for me. I knew that I wanted to do this long term. And I think that I just realized in that moment, this long term is not a recipe for
Hmm.
success from a mental standpoint for me. Like if this transaction is representative from a mental standpoint of the transaction moving
Hmm.
forward, I won't do well because I don't do
Yeah,
well when it's not personal. I just
yeah,
don't. It needs to be personal.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And I guess the other thing that comes to mind is the transaction, like in the real estate transaction, is like you getting it, you closing it, you getting your paycheck. That's a win, right? And what
Sure.
you're saying is there are some times where that win is actually a loss because of how you
Yeah.
interacted with the person or how you treated them, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's
Fair.
a bigger
Great
win and
point.
a littler win. And the bigger one has to be first before and more importantly than the smaller one, right?
Absolutely. And I can and this is no cliche. This is the God's honest truth. I remember like my wife say that in a, 1 week I'd have 2 to 3 closings, right? And she'd be like, "Oh, good for you. Congratulations. That's been great. You've been working hard. What sort of income are you gonna have this month?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." Like that was I don't know. I haven't even really looked at it. Because again, for me, I started learning that if I start counting those checks before they've even been it's like I lose
Deposit?
focus. I'm not doing it for the right
Oh,
reason. And
okay.
so for me, and I mean that, like I've hardly even, you know, now when as the business grows and you start to have more of there's more expenses going out, more, sometimes you're looking ahead only from like
Yeah.
a business, a financial planning standpoint, not as much about like what
Mhm.
you're making. But, you know, I remember that being the case for a long time where I'd be like, I have no idea what I'm making because I'm not even looking at that. I'm just looking at, like you said, I'm looking at the bigger win, which is, being at the closing table and they're,
Mhm.
just hugging you and crying about how smooth things went or, um, you know, just little things like that. So yeah, I think that's exactly right. The bigger win is the bigger fish is the, that
Yeah. And
increased
also if
relationship.
yeah, and if they are if you have to choose one of the ones, you've made the decision on which one you're going to choose, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%, 100%. And there's,
Yeah.
I've been told at times in my career, "Well, you can't do that. You have a business to run." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I am running a business. It's just not it may just not be
Yeah.
strictly, you know, the way you would run yours."
Yeah. Yeah. You're in, and I guess, you know, I guess to kind of rewind a little bit, let's like, where did you start out? You know, you didn't start out as an entrepreneur, so tell us about how it begun, and how you went on the employment journey. You know, what was life like for you growing up? You talk about your faith. How did that play a part in all of this?
Yeah, so my dad was and is an entrepreneur. I mean, he's without a doubt, probably been my biggest
So you were
inspiration,
born an
honestly.
entrepreneur.
Yeah, I was born, in a family of entrepreneurs for sure. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
honestly, I talk about that with my brother, a good bit. You know, my, uh my dad owned his own business, started a metal roofing company right out of high school. It was a metal, distribution company. He ran that for right at 30 years, sold it back in 2015. My uncle, really 2 of my 3 uncles, or 3 of my 5, if you count both my mom and my dad, all own their own businesses. And
Mhm.
so really, like, we've always said, like, our family is built on, entrepreneurial, um, work. And so, uh, you know, I've seen my dad work his tail off. I remember watching him, and this is interesting because I was at a church event, um, not too long ago, and we were looking through some things, and he was showing us how he can, based on, certain fears and certain things in your life, how he can pretty much show you, what drives you, and all these things. And so, I looked at mine, and mine was, that I am, somebody that just strives to, provide. I'm a provider, so I want to stack for my family and work really hard for my family, and that's always been natural for me, just the way I was raised. And it was funny because I was talking to the instructor afterwards, and I asked him. I said, I think this is accurate. I think I am right here." And he started kind of, asking me questions. He goes, "What do you think made you that way?" Kind of, like you're
Yeah.
asking. What do you think made you that way? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, my dad was self-employed. He was an entrepreneur. He goes, "Okay, but the fact that you're so obsessed with providing and having, options for your family, and all these things, what do you?" And he goes, "Did you ever see anything really negative from your dad when it came to finances or owning his business?" And I said, "Well, yeah, he made it through the Great Recession." And I remember in '08, '07, '08, I remember, like, very vividly seeing him at the dinner table, like, hair frazzled and papers everywhere, and him telling us that Christmas was not going to be, uh, too fun this year, and
Mhm.
knowing that he was having to cut pay from his all his employees and not give bonuses and not pay himself because things were so tight,
Wow.
and he was gonna go under if he didn't do it. And
Yeah.
that scared the living daylights out of me at, like, 13 years old, just, like, seeing my dad, who never shed a tear, was never
Mm.
scared, was never frantic, was very emotionally unmoved when it
Mhm.
came to stuff like that, and to see him
And
like that, um and I didn't really put that together until I was talking to this guy about that, and I thought, "Holy cow!" Like, yeah, I think that was a big, big motivator for me, where
mhm.
that's where uh, the overwhelmingness I have of making sure I can provide for my family at all times, I think it kinda stems from that. So to answer your question about where that comes from, I know that it comes from my dad 100%. He had 1 gear, and it was go. I know that seeing him struggle like crazy, and that's a story for another day, of all the hoops he went through to make sure that he didn't go belly up and everything. Watching him persevere through that was, still is something that I'm asking him about all the time. Like, "Hey, when this happened,
Yeah.
how did you?" And he'll tell me, and it's a great story of just perseverance, and it's incredible. And so that, has really fueled me to kind of know that that's in my blood, and that's just who we are in our family, is like, we're not going to give up. We're going to keep working. Dad always said, "Nobody cares. Put your boots on and go to work." That's what he used to always say. So, that's always been kind of like a motivator for me. Like, "Shut up, Derek. Stop crying. Put your boots on. Go to work." Right. So,
Yeah.
um, that my dad definitely has been, really, really influential in my life for sure.
Yeah. So, how do you so what's you graduate high school?
Mhm.
What happens next? You go to college? You go work for someone? Do you
I graduated high school. I worked in Pendergrass off of 120 Highway 129, the Quick Trip. The gas station,
Oh,
quick
wow.
trip
Yeah.
distribution center was right up the road. So, worked at the distribution center for I don't know a year maybe. Was an idiot, like living for the weekend type thing. So ended up,
Like, it was
I
just a
think,
job to you? Like,
yeah, it was just a job. Like it was, you say you made $1,000, it was like you had $1,000 to spend till the next paycheck, right? Like
got
there
it.
was really no sort of intentionality there. Um, Worked there, worked a bunch of kind of just warehouse jobs. Ended up then working with my dad. I ended up deciding, okay, it's time to get my life straight. I can't do this. This is just not. It's not who God called me to be. It's not who I was raised to be. It's not just not who I am. There was always that
Yeah.
spiritual disconnect where it was like I was trying to do this, but it just wasn't. It wasn't me. And so started working for my dad's company. Started going to school. Went to Lanier Tech for business. Was really enjoying that. My wife now, my girlfriend at the time, um, she ended up getting pregnant with our son, and so when that happened, I was working. So I was working for my dad. We were dating. She got pregnant. Was living with them at the time. Started going to school full time. Started working at a place called Rochetti's, delivering pizzas after I would clock out of dad's place. Would deliver pizzas, and then that's when I started the eBay business.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so I was doing so the metal roofing, school, Rochetti's, and then started doing eBay. And then fast forward, through all that, and I was actually funny story. I don't know if I ever told you this. I was doing the eBay thing, was delivering a pizza to Jonathan Stover's house. Did not
Okay,
know Jonathan Silver at the time. My
yeah.
wife and his wife were friends, but I delivered a pizza to his house. RN came out and said, "Hey, aren't you Cassandra's husband?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, my husband wants to meet you. He wants to talk to you about a potential eBay situational deal." And I'm like, "Okay." So we met for dinner like a few nights later, and that's when I got introduced to Craig like the next day, and that's how I ended up getting the CK job. So um,
Yeah.
it is funny how like all these paths kind of like intersect and connect. So yeah, had I not been
Yeah, that's
delivering this, I wouldn't have ever met Jonathan. So
yeah, so you meet someone, then you meet another, and then before you know
yeah,
it, you're at this other company, and then I'm doing contract work for him, and we meet there.
yeah. Man, and I know you're sick and I know you were sick and tired of my vent sessions at that point. I used you as like a vent board, man. I was like,
We talked a lot, didn't we?
yeah, we did, man. You were a great
Yeah.
you were a great ear. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, you decide to go out on your own, start a business. Like, did you decide to start a business, and do real estate, or do you not sure what you're gonna do and just things fell in your lap? How did this transition play out?
Yeah. So I didn't ever I knew that naturally I was entrepreneurial, like, what because again, like, even getting hired from Craig, I got hired based on, um, proof and credentials. Like, I had a top-rated eBay store. I was doing really well in that, and that was something that Craig liked, and we hit it off when Jonathan introduced me, and so even just doing the eBay thing, that felt naturally entrepreneurial. And at the same time, I was selling a bunch of random stuff for people, man. Like when I first took that job at CK, like I remember, uh, was it Gary was a president at the time? Like he
Mhm.
he just like, hey Derek, here's a couple of iPhones. Can you sell these and I'll pay you X? And then, my dad's friend called me and was like, because when I was doing the eBay thing, I got a reputation for just flipping all sorts of junk, like
Yeah.
um, I was doing that at the same time I was working for my dad's company, like I told you earlier. And I remember one of his employees came in and like had one of those it was an Ocean Pacific, like the automatic napkin dispensers. And he came in there and he's like, "Hey, can you sell this?" Sold that, like sold toys
Yeah.
and trailers and also just random stuff for people. But I kind of got a reputation for being the guy that would just could sell whatever.
Yeah.
And while I was working for Craig, I started a little side company called Time to Consign. And so I kind of made that something where I just said, look, I'll sell anything and everything for you. And I tried to marry the idea of saving time while also putting money in your pocket. So kind of married like goodwill meets Plato's closet, if you will, right? So like,
Yeah.
you have stuff in your house and your wife's like, "Can you just get this out of here, Jason? Just take it to Goodwill." And I wanted to
Yeah.
make it something where it was like, instead of taking it to Goodwill, take it to, can we consign that? Can we time to consign
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
thing? And so people just bring their stuff. We would set up a certain, consignment number, and then I would sell it, and then you get your check in the mail. And it was as easy as dropping it off a Goodwill, but you got a check in return. And that was kind of the
Yeah.
idea. And so this is a fun story because this is like the moment that this is the seed that put real estate in my head. So
Yeah.
I was there was a place called uh Thrift Village, or, I think it was like Thrift Village or something. It was right across the road from CK. So on my lunch breaks, I
Okay.
would always go there. No, Value Village. That's what it was. Value
Okay.
Village.
Yeah.
On my lunch break, I would always go to Value Village, and I would just find miscellaneous crap, spend $20 and try to flip them for like 120 or whatever and make a little bit of money. And I was doing that one day, and I already started the consignment business, and I saw a car in the parking lot, and it had a for sale sign, like $2,500 or whatever. And I called the gentleman, or no, I called my dad first. I said, "Dad, I want to buy this car. I want to flip this car." And he was like, "Don't do that." And I'm like, "Why not?" He was like, "Don't do that, because you got to get insurance, and you got to get this, and you got to get that. That's just that you don't want to do that." And I'm like, he said, "Why don't you just pitch him time to consign and see if you could just consign the car for him?" And I'm like, "Well, that would kind of work." So I called the guy. He worked at Value Village. He comes out. I shake his hand. I introduce myself and tell him what I do. And I said, "Look, would you be okay if I could get you the money that you want for this car? Would you pay me like whatever on top? So if you're asking 25, if I get you three, would you be okay with giving me the five?" And he's like, "Sure." So I was like, "Okay." So I just took pictures of the car, threw it on Facebook Marketplace. Next day, had a guy drive from Charlotte, North Carolina, bought the car for $3,000, and he gave me the $500.
Wow.
Was ecstatic, like was so excited. And
It was like grabbing money out of thin air, right?
yeah, because I was like, what did I do outside of taking photos for somebody? But the thing is, you were just simply that liaison. Like, you were the person
Hmm.
that did the
Yeah.
little bit of work that he didn't want to do, which was the whole idea behind Time to Consign anyway, was just
Yeah.
being the person who values the stuff and the value of that stuff over the time to not do
Hmm.
anything with,
Yeah.
um, because that's all people are doing. People know when they take stuff to Goodwill, there's a value to it. They just don't have time to find that value. So they just drop it off
Mhm.
at Goodwill. And then
The
Goodwill
value
has a
to them is getting
multi-billion
rid of
dollar
it.
company. Yeah, for
Yeah.
your stuff, right? So I was so excited. And me and my wife had pizza that night, and she was like, "Oh, that's awesome." I showed her, and she's like, "That's incredible." And I said, "Babe, at this point, I felt like I've sold boats, jet skis, trailers, cars." I said, "I feel like the only thing I haven't sold yet is a house." And that was a little seed in my head where I was like,
Oh, wow.
I want to sell a house. I want to sell a
Yeah.
house. And then it turned into, um, maybe I get my real estate license. And then, yeah. And then but again,
Yeah.
is that story what made me want to do real estate? No, but it was that seed. It was that one little thing that
Yeah.
went,
Yeah.
huh, you know?
It's interesting
So
how those seeds work. I'm working on my book here called From the Garden to the Cross. And
that's
it's
yours.
about Jesus. Yeah. So
It's incredible. I have to get a
yeah,
copy
I've
of
been
that.
working on it for 4 years. So it's I'm hoping to be done in the near future. But I
In
had
the
a
next
seed when
four
I shut
years.
down my mark. Yeah, yeah. I had a seed when I shut down my marketing company. I had this thought like, I really felt like I needed to end my company with excellence. I needed to finish well.
Yeah.
And so this thought came to mind was, what does it mean to finish well? And then the thought came to mind, Jesus on the cross says, "It is finished." Maybe there's something there for me to learn about how to
Mm,
finish well. That was the seed in 2014, and then in 2020 I started writing it.
that's incredible. That's what a
Yeah,
great kind of aha moment there for you.
yeah, yeah.
That what does
So
it mean to
that's
finish well? And then our Savior is on the cross saying it is finished, and he's showing us
yeah,
what it means to finish well. Yeah,
yeah.
giving
So, but
everything you got, literally.
yeah, you bookmark those seeds, and then they get watered. Stuff happens in life, and whatever happens, they get watered.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything else about your story that you think is worth mentioning before we jump into some of our other questions?
Um, I mean, I feel like as far as like my story in regards to like how I got to where I am, I think, like I said, I think my family is crucial. You know, and my faith is crucial as well. I know that again. I think even the story I shared earlier about just knowing that I'm not just a transactional person and I want it to be very relational. I know that that comes from a deep seated spiritual part of myself too. That you know everything that we do, we're to do as if we're pleasing the Lord, right? And so even in that moment, I think that those things that I felt in those moments where I felt like it was strictly transactional, that felt gross. I know at this point in my life that that was because there's a deeper spiritual purpose and meaning to what it is that I'm doing. Um, like with anybody, there's been times in my career that I've questioned, like, Lord, am I supposed to be here? Like, you have one bad transaction or something happens, and you know somebody's mad and cussing you out, and you did an awful job or something. You're like, and you're sitting there going, like, am I supposed to be here, Lord? Like, do I have this all wrong? Like, maybe this isn't. And the Lord has reminded me in so many ways and so many times, like, no, I've got you right where I want you. And He's shown me that He's given me this platform with real estate as a vehicle um,
Hmm.
to 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 change lives. Hopefully, more often than not for Him and to grow His kingdom and just that's something I don't take lightly at all. So I think if there is one thing that I could say about my story and my kind of figure out who I am as a business owner and figure out who I am as a real estate agent. It's that I know the Lord's called me to be here. And in a lot of ways, when you, as a follower of Christ, when you know the Lord's called you into a certain role, it takes a lot of that pressure off. Not pressure in the sense of I don't have to show up, but pressure of there's not that idea of do I belong? 100% I belong. I'm
Oh,
called to
okay.
be in this industry, and there's no question about that. Because my father's
Talk
told
to
me
us
that.
more
And
about,
so
yeah, well, just the idea of belonging. Dive into that more.
yeah, I think I talk to a lot of agents about this often. There's always, and I don't think it's specific to career. I think it's just specific to humans in general.
Hmm.
I feel like we multiple times a year. I feel like we all have these identity crises, identity crises. I don't know,
And crises.
but just this I yeah crises. But we do. I think that but even look in the Bible, right? Like I mean, God would call people to do certain things, and even they were like, "Who am I, Lord?" Like, "What? You don't mean me, right?" Like, I'm a screwed up individual. Um, and it's a beautiful thing. It's such a it's such a privilege and something we shouldn't take lightly as followers of Christ to be able to have that one-on-one, um, personal relationship and that connection. Um,
Mm,
Through prayer, and that's something I
yeah.
try to do every day, is spend time with the Lord in quiet time and in prayer, and just shut up. Like, stop talking and let Him talk to you. Sometimes we get in our we start praying, and it's like, "La, la, 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 la," and it's like we don't leave any space for the Lord, and so I try to be intentional about just going in there, "Lord, thank you for everything you've done for me. Thank you for my blessings. Thank you for my friends and my family and my health and my business. I just wanna give you this time because you're worthy of it. I just want to hear from you, right? And just be silent and just embrace that
Yeah.
silence. And in those moments, it's like the Lord will, I know the Lord's telling me, like, I've got a plan for you. This is where I want you. And outside of Christ, I don't really know how you would necessarily find that. That's how I've found it is through Christ. So I can only speak from as a follower of Christ how I find that purpose.
Yeah.
But he's certainly shown me that this is where he wants me. And so, like I said
Hmm.
earlier, when I know I'm where he wants me, it takes off a lot of that pressure of the constant, every time there's an issue, I'm not going. Do I belong? Do I belong? I don't have that 6 month identity crisis
Hmm.
because I know he's got me where he wants me. And
Hmm.
that's something that I owe all the glory to him in that. And I think that in a lot of ways, that's what allows me to just work as hard as I do because I don't have, you know, I'm blessed in that sense that he's shown that to me. And I would challenge anybody out there that doesn't know, you know, how that feels to feel um, maybe like called to do something or feeling like they belong. I would simply say that a lot of times I don't think that's a physical issue. I would say it's probably more of a spiritual issue.
Mhm.
And to look to God in those moments, um,
Yeah.
to tell you where he wants you, and you know, be ready to be. Luckily, I love what he's called me to do. You know, that could change tomorrow, but you know, that's where
Yeah,
I find that belonging.
yeah. So, talk to us, about when you started your business, how did you start getting clients?
So I told you earlier that, you know, the first night I took that notepad and just wrote down every phone number and contact in my phone, front, back, 3 or 4 pages worth. Um, and I just called
Every
and
person you knew.
called every person I knew, man, and that's no joke. I mean, like, when I tell you that for the next 3 or 4 days I called, I mean, literally, I had so many names on there that I was calling, like, nonstop. And I had one person that said, "Yeah, I'm about to get married, and I wanna be in a house before I get married." And it was like, "Okay." And so I just hit the ground running and helped them find that house, and, eh, like, that house is so special. 140 E. Wright Street in Winder was the first house I ever sold, and that house is, really special to me, but that family's really special to me. It was incredible, and I remember being at that closing table for that first transaction when his mother called me and was like, "I found a house. I want you to help me buy this house." And it was like it started snowballing at that point because,
Yeah,
you know, you just
yeah.
it
Well,
but I
once you do the first one, then it feels possible, right?
yeah, 100 and I was gonna say the same thing. Like, once I did that, then that monkey was off my back, right? Now it was like,
Mm.
"Oh, okay, that's how it looks. Like, is that okay? All right, cool." And I was also excited to learn what it didn't look like. I was excited to
Yeah.
learn where's the baseline of, like,
Mhm.
handling a transaction, you know? Like, in the grand scheme, was the first transaction, was that an easy transaction or was that a hard one? Like, I don't really have a baseline to
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you know? So I was excited to kinda go, "Okay, I wanna do 5 more so that I can look and see, okay, like, where does that stack up, right, in
Yeah.
comparison to," you know? So it
So then you got
and I
then number 3 was the hard one?
oh, man, yeah, number 3, had I been able to have, some insight into that one, I would have really, understood that the first one was smooth sailing for sure.
Yeah, it's like having kids, you know, you get a hard one or an easy one, and then you think everything else is gonna be like that, and it's not.
You know, it's funny you say that because I just told somebody that the other day. I said, "Me and my wife got a little bit of a big head when Asher was born. He was so easy, and he was such an awesome kid, slept through the night, never had any issues with him." And me and my wife, I remember one night he was sleeping through the night, and we looked at each other and we're like, "These other parents, they just they just don't do it like us, apparently. I mean, we've got this thing in the bag." And then my daughter was born, and I'm like, the Lord humbled us very quickly. It was like, nope, it was just
Uh,
him. It was nothing to do with y'all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, talk to us, what does it mean to live better?
That's a great question. To live better, I I think for me, living better comes down to one word, and this is something that over the last year I've really, really, really had to hone in on. For me, living better is all about living um, with purpose and living with intention. I think that
Mm,
for so long early in my career, there was a lot of tail wagging the dog instead of the dog wagging the tail,
mhm,
and maybe a lot more reactiveness than proactiveness.
mhm. Yeah,
And I that was just something that I had to learn as the years went on and as business started picking up, and there was a little bit more certainty in some areas of my career.
mhm.
And you can get past that. You do anything it takes. You know, I mean, it's just like you do it because you're starting out. Whereas things
Yeah,
start to kind of level out and
get
there's a
steady.
certain level of expectation there. Exactly. It was like, okay, how do we scale this in order to, because you remember the book, I think you may have mentioned it to me. I think I borrowed it from Craig, the E-Myth, right? The E-Myth was
Mhm.
such a great book. And that was something that put in my eyes, like, Derek, if you stopped going into work tomorrow, like, you don't really have a business, you have a job. And that was something where I was like, oh yeah, I need to be very intentional about building out these systems and building out these processes so that I can take a vacation with my kids and my wife and be where my feet are. And so
Yeah.
to me, I've learned that for me, living better is living with purpose and living with intention so that when I'm working, I'm working. That's what
Yeah.
I'm doing. And when I'm playing and when I'm with my kids, I'm playing and I'm with my kids. Last year was the first vacation I took since I got into real estate in which I was with my kids and with my wife. We went to
Present.
Disney with some friends. I put my phone in my wife's fanny pack, and I didn't. We'd go to the park at what time they opened, 6:30, whatever it was, 6:30, 7 a.m. Phone was in her fanny pack, and I didn't look at it until we got back to the hotel that night. And I
Mm.
set the expectation with all my clients beforehand. Hey, I'm going to be at Disney. If you have an emergency, here's so you can call. I will call you back. I will return your texts. I will return your emails, but it will be after 8 p.m. Um, and being intentional with that, and being unapologetically intentional, and it
Yeah.
not feeling like the whole time I'm at the park that I owe somebody an apology because I can't answer a
Mm.
question that they may or may not have. Um,
So
that's
what
really
is it that gave you that anchor?
that gave me that what, Jason? I'm sorry.
The anchor. Why were you able to sort of set
Mm.
that, Gandalf, you shall not pass moment?
My family, my kids,
Okay.
just I just started
I
getting
mean,
really,
you could have fed your family and kids to the wood chipper, you didn't have to honor them.
I mean, like that's just who we are as great family men, you know. I mean, I'll be honest though, Jason, and it it's kind of an unnatural thing for me. Like if I'm being honest, I told you about my dad and how much of an inspiration he was to me. My dad didn't take days off. Like I don't know, looking at him, I don't know what a day off is. Um, he didn't have an e-break. Like he worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and that's all he's known. It's how he was
Yeah.
raised. And so it's not natural, if I'm being honest, for me to be um like I love what I do to a point where I can work through the weekend and I would be fine. I genuinely love what I do. So in a lot of ways, like me taking off for vacation feels weird. Like it feels unnatural. And that's where I think, Jason, that when I said earlier unapologetically intentional, I naturally, because I think it feels so out of the norm for me not to be working, that I feel this like deep seated reason to apologize to somebody. Like I should be working. And I think that goes back to like my dad and never seeing him take a day off, that I feel the need to
Yeah.
apologize if I'm not working. Um, but those aha moments, those anchors for me is, um, I heard somebody say, I did Bold last year with Keller Williams, and one of the things that one of the
Okay.
instructors said is he said, and I love this, he said, make sure that your willingness matches your wants, or your wants matches your willingness. And
Mhm.
that was something for me where I went, huh, like I do want 50 transactions in a year. I do want
Mhm.
60 closings. I do want that. But am I willing to put in the dedicated time and energy and all that it takes to do that? I don't know if I am. Why? Because I want to see my kids' basketball games. I want to see my kids' dance recitals. I want to see my daughter in gymnastics. I want to take a spontaneous date night with my wife. And truthfully, I'm not at a point in my life right now with the systems and everything that I think I could handle 60 units and do those
Mm.
things. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was I I want to be at my kids' sporting events. I want to do these things. And at some point, that was in a lot of ways a motivator for me to go, all right, it's time to really hone in on these systems so that I can get what I want within the business, but also not have to sacrifice my willingness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was really about last year saying, okay, when I'm with my family, they deserve all of me, just like when I'm with my clients, they deserve all of me. And so for me, it was like a baby step into what
Mhm.
this year's been, and into really scaling the business, and being able to like hire. We'll talk about this later, but hire my wife onto the team this year, and her helping me scale it and everything. It's been awesome. But yeah, I'm gonna say
Yeah.
my kids for sure want to be there for them.
Yeah. So when we started, you talked about your difficult client at the beginning, and the win of the transaction versus the win of the relationship, and having to balance those two. And now you've transitioned to a situation where that complexity, there's a lot more wins, a lot of more players involved. How do you help everyone win, right? And manage this more complex system so it's fruitful and fair to everyone involved, but also motivating and exciting. And so, talk to us about just the difference of that complexity and how that just amplifies the challenge, but also maybe is more motivating to create something more complex.
That's where I feel like that's where I'm kind of at now, right? Because this
Hmm.
year, it's been a great year. I've been blessed to be able to I say kind of, to essentially double my units year over year this year with the help of my wife. And so I only say that to say that this is the year that I'm really figuring that out, right? Because
Hmm.
um, I feel like over the last couple of years of my career, I've kind of had a ceiling that I just couldn't get past. And this year, I've
Mm.
broke through that ceiling two times, and so it's been something where uh, that question I would say is answered best by me talking about the systems, and like
Hmm.
you know, I got to a point this year where, because of me wanting to be intentional, and I tell the agents that we're in these classes with, and teaching and coaching every morning, like, you're gonna get sick of me. You're gonna get sick of hearing me say the word intentionality, intentionality,
Hmm.
intentionality. But like, again, being very intentional this year at saying I want to scale this um, relationally driven real estate um, opportunity. And so the only way I know to do that, because that's a great question that you asked, right? Like, how do you scale something that is relationally driven when there's only one of you that has
Hmm.
that that empathetic, relationally driven attitude? Um, how do you scale that but give everybody the same level of service?
Hmm.
And it simply come down to, since I've hired my wife, she's been able to handle all of the transactional things, the paperwork, the scheduling, the logistics. Jason, I did not realize until this year, because again, I've done this by myself for 5.5 years. I did not realize until this year how many balls I was juggling, that now that I had my wife helping, that I did not need to be juggling. I started realizing that, because there was like this myth that I had for a bit that, like, well, based on what I'm doing, if even it was just me and my wife, I can only do so many because I
Hmm.
just can't service everybody. And then what dawned on me as we started working together and really starting to kind of expand on what her job would be and how much pressure would be taken off me on these certain transactional things, it was very obvious of going, holy cow, wait a second. I've just freed up like 60% of my schedule. Oh, wait, hold on. Now
Yeah.
I can scale this thing as big as I want, as long as the things that are getting in the way of that relationally driven process are taken care of with people that I trust, and they're being handled accurately, and the way they should be
Yeah.
handled. So hiring my wife and me being able to say, like yesterday, right? There was somebody that I've been talking to for a while that I signed a new listing and a buyer yesterday, and being able to essentially, as those emails come in, forward them to my wife and go, hey, knock this out. And I'm at the appointments, and I know all the paperwork's taken care of on the back end. And we put something under contract yesterday, sending that over to her, and she's doing a welcome email to the attorney and a welcome email to the lender, and getting him all the important dates and all that stuff. And I'm like over here, like, calling the buyer, like, hey, is there everything, you got everything you need? You need this, you need that. Let's see this tomorrow. Let's not, And so because of those systems and those processes, she's allowed me, with her help, all I'm doing now is
Mhm.
handling the relationally driven parts
Mhm.
of the transaction, which is the calling, the showing, the listing appointments, the hand holding, if you will, uh, professionally.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, that's been something where I didn't know until this year what that was really going to look like. But having her come on staff and being able to take over those things, and she said before, she's like, "Sweetheart, my I look at it like this: my job is to make it to where all you've got to do is go be with your people." And that's what I love, is that she understands that, like,
Yeah.
let me go serve my community. Um, and she likes being kind of the background work, and handles all that. So, like, even she was she was handling all of our tax stuff, getting it ready for
Yeah.
our accountant at the end of the year to see about where we're at from a tax standpoint. That's something that over the last 5.5 years has drove me bonkers while I'm trying to do everything else. Like, what a lifted burden, and it keeps me at a level where I can talk to people and not be burdened by, well, I'd love to see you
Yeah.
tomorrow, but I got to do paperwork because I haven't been able to do paperwork for the last three
Mhm.
days. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
having a great employee, is probably what I'm learning is definitely a way that I can scale it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a kind of a dive into systems. How about the story side of things? How have I mean, you I think you're, if I remember right, used to, when you did your podcast, you did the movies and TV shows,
Yeah.
of sorts. So, how have stories shaped you as a person, and how do they apply to your work?
Hmm. How have stories shaped me as a person? That's a
Or
great
which
question. I
stories?
Yeah. Man, like I said earlier, like, I think my dad has inspired me in so many ways. Just seeing him, seeing my uncles. Um, I've always loved the idea. Like, I've always loved reading, and so I read a lot when I was younger. Like, I remember the first time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and, like, just being so
Mhm.
inspired by that.
Yeah.
I've just always loved the idea of, like, even when I watch movies, um, reading books, watching my dad, I just always love the idea of, like, the freedom, and not to reference Rich Dad Poor Dad, but, like, the whole rat race idea, right? Like, I've always loved the idea of being able to be, like, financially free and being free from this. Like, my dad used to always tell me, and it's always stuck with me. He's like, "I wanna sacrifice now so that I can enjoy life down the road, and I wanna work because I wanna work, not because I have to work." And that was something that
Yeah.
I've always thought about since I was a kid. Like, I don't know what it's gonna be, but I really wanna work one day because I wanna work, not because I have to work. And so I think that in a lot of ways has always been with me. Um, it just, as you get older and you kinda get forced into certain things, it's funny how you don't realize you're pulling from this well, like you were saying, of stories or whatever it is. Like, you're
Mhm.
pulling from this stuff and you're going, I guess I've been thinking about this since I was 12 years old. I just really
Yeah, yeah.
didn't know at the time that it was actually some sort of influential book that I was reading that would impact me 20 years later. Um, but yeah, man, like, and I'm a big movie buff. Like, I love movies. I love music. I love art. Used to do a lot of acting, did stand-up comedy for a while. Um, so I've just always loved expression like that. Like, one of my favorite movies growing up when I was a kid was, like, Ace Ventura, like, the any
Yeah.
Jim Carrey movie. And so just, like, you know, um, I
Liar,
feel like
liar.
growing up, I knew those scripts. And yeah, like, and it was, getting into acting and stuff like that. And what's fun, man,
Yeah.
is, like, again, you're pulling from that well. Like, I loved, like I said, I loved acting, loved comedy, loved doing stuff like that, loved writing. And then when I got into real estate, I realized that I can use every bit of that. I can pull from
Yeah.
every bit of that. So when I was doing the podcast, and we're talking about movies and music, and I'm doing some skits, and we're doing commercials, and we're putting together testimonials for the website in which I'm more or less being allowed to direct, right? Like, which is
Mhm.
what I've always loved doing since I was a kid. Like, it's stuff like that that I love, kind of the
Yeah.
unintentional influence of,
Mhm.
just do what you love, and you can incorporate it even in your business.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really answers your
What
question,
addition
but
No, I mean, it works. It works for me. What additional wisdom or insights would you like to share that you haven't yet had a chance to?
hmm, let's see. I actually wrote. So this is something I was talking about this morning in a class, and some of my shower thoughts. 'Cause I feel like I think we do some of our best thinking in the shower. And I was thinking this morning, and I was talking to my pastor. We had lunch a few weeks ago, and we were talking about this. And I was thinking about this morning. I want to be very, how do I say this? I want to be very focused now, and then going into my career even further as I grow. I want to be very cognizant of that line between contentment and complacency, because I think for me, that's a line that sometimes, if we're not careful, we can allow ourselves to justify um complacency. and
Mhm,
and I think that the only way that you can really know what your line of complacency and contentment is to be able to kind of like have a self audit and like look at yourself and say, okay,
mhm.
what is it that I really want? And
Yeah.
then once you know that, then you have that line where you can say, okay, well, at any point, because there's going to be days where you just don't feel like your why is big enough, and you don't feel like
Mhm.
you actually are motivated enough to go for that. And so if you don't know what it is that you really want and what really will make you content, then you really can't answer the question, am I being complacent or am I being content right now? And that's
Mm.
something my pastor and I were talking about the other day. And he said, "What can I pray for you about?" And I said, "Just pray that I would have wisdom to know the difference between complacency and contentment." And um that's something that I think is really important. Because I think
Yeah.
we're so good at justifying stuff. And if we're not
Yeah.
careful, we'll justify ourselves into complacency.
Yeah. That's our superpower, human superpower.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
Um, who's if someone's interested in working with you, who's a good fit?
Who's a good fit for working with me?
To work with you, yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I think somebody that's a good fit for working with me is somebody that at the end of the day is prioritizing um being able to have somebody that feels like, or that wants to be treated like family, that will feel like family. I've told people at their dinner table, look, if you're looking for somebody that's just going to give you, now listen, I can give you charts and graphs and I can give you data all day. I can bore you with that stuff until you're sleeping. But if you want somebody that's, I mean, just simply analytically driven, and they're just kind of, here's our packet and here's how we're going to do it and read this and what do you think? That's just not me. Um, I'm very much, like I said, I've said it, you know, 100 times at this point. I'm very relationally driven. So I'm somebody that comes in, I'm going to be probably asking you more questions about who you are, your family, your kids, your schedule, what motivates you, stuff like that, to really know who you are. Because, like I said earlier, I think bad agents can sell homes. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's no problem. But I really want to connect with that person. So some people just don't connect with me because they just want, hey, I just want you to tell me how to sell my house and I want to be done. Right. Like that's probably
Yeah.
not, more often than not, that's not the person I really want to work with. Um, Somebody that's prioritizes relationships, is motivated by knowing they're taken care of, wanting somebody they can trust. Um,
Yeah.
Once the
Is it
transaction's done,
mostly is it sellers and buyers or just sellers?
yeah, sellers and buyers. I work with a lot of buyers. I work with a lot of sellers. Actually, I looked the other day on my like homes.com page, and you can actually see the balance. It's like
Oh,
I'm
okay.
very balanced. It's like within like 4 transactions, it's like 4 more sellers I've represented over my 6 years than buyers. So pretty
Yeah.
well balanced. But yeah, I work with both. Um,
And what area, if they're in Florida, can they call you up?
yeah, they can call me up. I'm just going to refer them out to a great agent in Florida. Yeah. No, I'm licensed in Georgia. I've been in Jackson County my entire life. All 31 years I've been in Jackson County. I serve Jackson and surrounding, as well, I like to say. So Jackson, Barrow, Banks, Hall, Clark, Gwinnett, Madison. But I've went as far north as Elberton, and then
Oh,
I've,
okay.
went as far south as,
Is that
say,
still
Atlanta.
Georgia or is
So
that North Carolina?
you tell me and we'll both know. I have no idea. No, it's, yeah, definitely Georgia, but very close, very close.
Yeah, yeah. And so Jackson County, what I guess one other question I'd have is, you kind of entered real estate in a very crazy, chaotic era of society and economy. The pandemic, kind of the drop, the up. Now it's
Yeah.
crazy again in different ways. How does it affect you? Are you able to sort of skirt the crises?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember when I got into it in 20, everybody was like, "Oh, what a great time to get in it." And I'm like, "For who?" Not for these buyers, I can tell you that. From the interest rate standpoint, great time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like from a buying standpoint, it was like, when your listing price is your starting bid, like it's a pretty tough market. Real quick, Jason, that market, this is one of those moments that tells you how bad this market was. There was in that market, I remember seeing a condo in Gainesville, $200,000. Made an offer for my buyers at 200,000 and the seller countered our full price offer at 215. You tell me
Wow.
if that's a normal market. That was crazy. Um yeah, it's definitely shifted for sure. That was a crazy crazy market. But one that I'm actually very happy to have gotten in the business in because again, having my dad right there beside me, my broker at the time, they kept telling me this is not normal. Make hay while the sun's out, but save, 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 save. Because a lot of these agents think this is normal. It's not. And when it pops and it shifts, you need to be able to be ready. And we've seen the shift. We went from 2.5, 2.25, or 2.75 interest rates to they got as high last year as 7. That was a crazy, crazy um, crazy hard time. But this year, it's wild. I talk to certain agents and they're struggling, struggling, struggling. Um, like I said, this has been the best year of my career. I've been able to double my unit goal. And I'm realizing, man, I'm not trying to make this. I'm not trying to oversimplify it. It comes down to your work ethic. It comes down to what are you doing during your slow times. I don't care how busy I
Mm.
get. I'm lead genning. I'm dialing every single day. I'm talking to my sphere of influence. I'm talking to,
Mhm,
I'm cold calling. I'm calling FISBOs.
mhm.
I'm doing anything that it takes.
Yeah.
Regardless of how busy I get. That's the level of intentionality that I'm hitting every day. So, you know, respectfully, Jason, I look at it and I go, I don't really care. Like whatever the market's doing is what the market's doing. That's the those are the confines that every agent's
Mhm.
working within. And so I don't really
Yeah.
lean too heavy on. Now I need to know where the market's at in order to strategize, but I don't sit
Yeah.
here and go, "Well, it's just a slow market. I guess it's just slow." It's like, "No, no, no."
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
somebody's buying because it's not zero sales.
Yeah. Well, I think, someone told me that, like, during the 2008, market crash, it was a culling period for mediocre and complacent,
Mm.
folks, and so maybe that's, part of what your lesson is, like, if you wanna make it work, you can not only survive, but you can actually have your best year ever.
100%, 100%. I mean, but again, it goes right back to what we just talked about, right? If you want to justify it's the market, sure, it can be. You could sit here
Yeah.
and say, well, these 6.5% interest rates are tough. But dude, I dare do the research. Over the last 30 years, the average interest rates were around 7%. So you could actually I could argue with you that we're actually below the national average over the
Mhm.
last 30 years. So are we really in a
Yeah.
I mean, y- you know,
So what would you tell, like, there seems to be a lot of despair in terms of, like, buyers, particularly young buyers of
mhm.
houses. They wanna buy a house, they don't think they can. What would you say to them, to that group of people about buying a house?
Yeah, so, I'm not somebody that's gonna sit there and just try to sell everybody on the same product. Like it's so contextual, it's so situational, right? I'm not gonna sit there and just tell everybody it's a perfect time to buy, 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 buy. I don't know your situation. And that's why I say that what I do is so relational, um, because I want to get to know the person I'm talking to. What are your motivations? What are you looking to stay in the area for a long time? Well, no, I'm
Mhm.
just trying to fill out the area. I may be moving from my job to Colorado in the next year. Hey, buying may not be the move for you. That may be a position in which you want to rent. Um, so really, it's really just getting to know the person I'm talking to, figuring out what their motivations are, figuring out what their needs are, figuring out what their wants are. And then based on that, walking through all of the, again, being intentional and walking through um, the best courses of action that may work for them, right? Like I've talked to people who go, I really want to buy, but I don't have a down payment. And then you end up talking to them and find out they had no idea that they could, borrow money from their 401k, or that they didn't know they
Hmm.
could do this or that. And so it's just having I tell buyers all the time, let's have an intellectual conversation together so that we can make an intellectual decision. And
Yeah.
if that means you want to buy or you want to sell, then great. If not, no harm, no foul. But at least we've educated you in the
Hmm.
process, and I'm here whenever you decide to make a move one way or the other. But you
Yeah.
know, I can't sit there and give a one size fits all answer to a question that's going to depend on ultimately like who am I talking to. Um,
Yeah.
so it would really just depend.
Yeah. How can people connect with you? What's your website? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is relationshipsoverrevenue.com. So I got both of the domains for relationships spelled the normal way, and then the way that I do it on the hashtag on my social media a good bit is the real REAL Asianships
Mm,
over revenue. So you can do either
yeah.
relationships spelled normal or real Asianships over revenue. You can contact me there. You can add me on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Derek Worley.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, man, would love to connect with anybody here, with you. Anything I can do to help serve, I'm eager
Yeah.
and excited.
Now, if anyone wants to watch you doing that stand-up comedy you told us about, where would they find that?
All right, Jason, is that the end of this? No, I'm kidding. I don't know. Lord willing, no one recorded it. That is a story for another day. That was, yeah, that was a lot of fun, but yeah, no. I did a commercial recently that I'm getting like calls and texts on. It seems like every day where somebody's like, "Hey, were you on a Pinnacle commercial on TV?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know that guy." And this doppelganger, like,
It's
"Yes, I don't know."
your moonlighting as an actor.
Yeah,
Any final
right.
thoughts? Anything else you wanna share?
I just really appreciate you having me on here. Again, I know I long-winded conversation, but man, I appreciate you having me on. I love what I do. I love the opportunity to be able to chat with you, and hopefully this is inspiring to some people to get out there and like work your butt off, man. Don't be scared to chase your dreams, and don't be naive enough to think that it's an easy chase. It's something that you got to always work hard. Like my dad says, you know, no one cares. Put your boots on, go to work, right? Like just go out there and work hard, love what you do. And if I could offer one piece of advice to everybody, it's be intentional. Don't do anything aimlessly. I think that's a mistake we
Yeah.
all make is, a lot of these agents they'll call and they'll be, I made my 20 calls, Derek. And I'm like, what was the intention? Well, you can make 100 calls. It's not worth anything if you're not being intentional, right? It's easy to be aimless.
Mhm.
So just go be intentional, go work your tail off because you're worth it, man. You really are. You're worth working hard for. So thank you again for having me on here, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your life with us. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and this has been another episode of the Share Life podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye guys.
Are you a small business owner? Have you hit a glass ceiling where year over year you cannot rise above a certain revenue level? Check out Jason Scott Montoya's book, The Jump, to discover how to level up your leadership and pivot your entrepreneurial passion to the highest level.